guys, by reading you something. It's a quote. You'll understand why I kind of waited for a second to get that out. I didn't want you to get distracted. For about 10 years, Linda Rand had some tests run on me, and like many aging men, what was discovered is I had low T. Some of you may be there and be doing something about it, or you may not know that you're there and need to do something about it. So every morning, I have this syringe that's compounded. It's kind of like androgel, and I've forgotten what the other one that's out on the market that you can get. This is prescription, but it's probably 3 times as powerful as what you get, so to speak, over the counter. And every morning, I rub this alternatively on one of my thighs, okay, and it makes me a powerful man. No, I don't know that it does that, but it does help, okay, for my low T issues, because it creates a lot of issues and difficulties in many areas, not just in the sexual realm. You might say it really can in terms of fatigue and other issues, and a lot of men suffer from it. What we're going to talk about today is not just something that men suffer from, that all of us can suffer from if we're not careful, and it has to do with low T. I want to read you a quote. Stephen Covey is probably best known for, years ago, the 1 Minute Manager. Is that right? No?
Seven Habits.
Habits, Highly Effective. That's it. Blanchard was 1 Minute Manager. He wrote a book in 2006. And I'll tell you the title of the book in a minute, but if I tell you that, it'll kind of give it away. And here's a quote from the book. There is one thing that is common to every individual, relationship, team, family, organization, nation, economy, and civilization throughout the world. One thing which, if removed, will destroy the most powerful government, the most successful businesses, the most thriving economy, the most influential leadership, the greatest friendship, the strongest character, and the deepest love. On the other hand, if developed and leveraged, that one thing has the potential to create unparalleled success and prosperity in every dimension of life. That one thing is trust. That one thing is trust. And I'm convinced there are some folks who are, it's almost intentionally distrustful. But I don't think those people are in the room. But I do think sometimes, by virtue of what we say, what we do, or what we don't say, or what we don't do, we unintentionally lower the trust. And any time we lower the trust level between us and anyone else, okay, beginning at home and beyond, then it begins to negatively impact the opportunity that you and I have to make a difference in the lives of others. Because if people don't trust the messenger, they're probably not going to adhere to the message. So you and I have to be people of high T, or high trust. Okay? There was I came across a couple of, me, I'm a stat nut. And back in 2010, a group did a study of the top characteristics of the most admired leaders. Of the most admired leaders. And here are the top 4. 85%, way in front of number 2, 85% of said the most admired characteristic of an admirable leader is trustworthy. 70%, that's a significant drop to number 2, visionary. Third, inspiring, 69%, real close. We talked about that a couple of months ago, the capacity to motivate yourself and others. 64% said, I admire somebody who's competent, who can get the desired outcomes and results that are needed. So you got 85% for trustworthy, 70% visionary, 69% inspiring, 64% competent. The next characteristic dropped all the way down to 42%. So those were the four. And by far, what stood up was the 85%. Now, here's one I'm still struggling with because it's so foreign to what I would think. Harvard Business Review did an international study, and the study showed that the majority of people trust a stranger more than they do their own boss. I struggle with the veracity of that one, but assuming that it's true, it probably explains a lot of the issues that are going on, as it were, in the marketplace out there. Let me get you to help me, okay? Ron, look up Matthew 6:1-8, okay? Melvin, look up John 2:23-24. Let's see, Matt, get 1 Corinthians 4:1-2. 1 Corinthians 4:1-2. Can you do Proverbs 11:13? Okay, Proverbs 12:19, Stephen? Okay. Proverbs 14:25. Proverbs 20, verse 6. Proverbs 20, verse 19. Proverbs 25:9 and 10. Proverbs 25:14-19. And then last one, Proverbs 28:13. Proverbs 28:13. Proverbs 28:13. Okay? All right. Listen, we're talking about, trust. Listen to the passage and see what God says to you. Let me begin with Jesus, as it were, conversation or speaking about a specific group of people out of Matthew 6. Go, Ron.
Beware of practicing your righteousness before men to be noticed by them. Otherwise you have no reward with your Father who is in heaven. When therefore you give alms, do not sound a trumpet before you, as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and in the streets, that they may be honored by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But when you give alms, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, that your alms may be in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will repay you. And when you pray, when you pray, you are not to be as the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners in order to be seen by men. Truly I say to you, they have their reward in full. But you, when you pray, go into your inner room, and when you have shut your door, pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees in secret will repay you. And when you are praying, do not use meaningless repetition as the Gentiles do, for they suppose that they will be heard for their many words. Therefore, do not be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask Him.
Okay, and then the John 2 passage. Who's got John 2?
I've got that one. Now, when He was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in His name when they saw the signs that He was doing. But Jesus, on His part, did not entrust Himself to them because He knew all people.
Okay. In the first passage, who's Jesus primarily addressing? Remember? Matthew 6. The Pharisees, the religious leaders of the day. Okay. And what He was saying, and there's and that's part of the reference that He's got here in John 2, as well, is I'm not going to trust myself to certain kinds of people. I'm not going to place my confidence in certain kind of people. Those were untrustworthy people, and yet they were the spiritual leaders of the day, the religious leaders of the day. Okay, that in that culture and in our culture tend to be held, right or wrong, in a higher regard for trustworthiness. That's why every time somebody who does what I do falls, I think the ramifications and ripple effect of that are much larger than anyone else. Now, we could argue whether or not that should be that way, but it is, because the level of trust expectation is higher than it is for a lot of other folks. Okay, and that may or may not be valid. It ought to be high for everyone. But those passages indicate the kind of people we don't want to trust because they haven't proven themselves to be trustworthy. Now, the dangerous thing about those people those passages refer to is I don't think they had a clue. Okay, I think they thought everybody else was untrustworthy, and they were the trustworthy ones, okay? Listen to Paul in 1 Corinthians 4, 1 and 2.
This is how one should regard us, as servants of Christ and stewards of the mysteries of God. Moreover, it is required of stewards that they be found faithful.
Moreover, it is required of a steward that they be found faithful, reliable, trustworthy. Now, listen to this series, and I could have gone, gosh, so many others, because it was interesting when I began to do the study in Proverbs of wisdom, how much the importance of faithfulness and trust and confidence was embedded in those, and I picked out some of them. So let's just go in order and let's just read them. Proverbs 11:13.
That's me. A gossip goes around telling secrets, but those who are trustworthy can keep a confidence.
Okay. You trust people that can't keep a confidence? You trust people that you have a conversation with, and before you know it, everybody else has heard that conversation? Absolutely not. Next passage, Proverbs 12:19.
Truthful lips endure forever, but a lying tongue is but for a moment.
Who trusts dishonest people? No. All right, the next one, 14:25.
A truthful witness saves lives, but one who breathes out lies is deceitful.
Deceit, dishonesty. We don't have confidence and belief in those kind of people. What about this one of my favorite, Proverbs 20, verse 6.
Many a man proclaims his own steadfast love, but a faithful man who can find?
I mean, there are a lot of people who say, hey, listen, you can depend on me. I'm reliable, I'm trustworthy, but faithful man, who really can find that? I mean, they're a rarity, and I think increasingly so in our culture. I haven't read statistics in several years, but I know over the last 20 years, cheating and lying has just escalated off the chart in a high school and in college, especially the cheating, just off the chart. And many of those professed believers. Under the guise, well, everybody else does it. And the pressure of making the grade, so the end justifies the means. Proverbs 20, verse 19.
A gossip tells secrets, so don't hang around with someone who talks too much.
Ooh. Gossip tells secrets, okay? Rumor spreading. You know, I've said for years, a gossip is usually under the guise of, hey, I need you to pray for someone. And we love having knowledge about folks, okay? Let's see, Proverbs 25, 9 and 10.
If you take your neighbor to court, do not betray another's confidence, for the one who hears it may shame you against the charge against you will stand.
Keeping the competency. You know, my daughter is a civil litigator and is in the courtroom some, and most of the time it's before a judge. Sometimes it's also before a judge and a jury. And what's always happening from the judge and always happening from the jury is trying to verify through what they say, through the events that took place, through their mannerisms, through corroboration, trying to determine the most important thing is the witness credible? Is the witness believable? Because ultimately judgment, either by the jury or the judge, will be rendered in whether or not do we believe this guy, this gal, or this person, okay? You and I, not just as Christian and men, but as leaders. Guys, I'm telling you and I are on a witness stand every day. We never get off. That's where we live. Every day, everything that you and I say is being inspected. And it's less important what we say, and it's more important what we do. Okay, let's read the next one. Proverbs 25, 14 and 19.
Like clouds and winds without rain is a man who boasts of a gift he does not give. Trusting in a treacherous man in time of trouble is like a bad tooth or a foot that slips.
Trusting in a treacherous man in time of trouble. I'm going to tell you one of the indicators of somebody that's trustworthy. Are they there for you in time of need? Are they there for you in time of need? Okay, and then the last one, Proverbs 28, 13.
Whoever conceals his transgressions will not prosper, but he who confesses and forsakes them will obtain mercy.
Okay. Be honest, be trustworthy, be credible. All right, now, I want you to take a few minutes. I've got 21 behaviors in front of you. I want to make one quick. When I created this, I just frankly saw last night, and I'm going to make one little change so it doesn't. Number 6 says be judgmental. That should be non-judgmental. Okay, not be, but not. Okay, non. Okay, and what I want you to do is to read through these behaviors. These are behaviors that build confidence, that inspire trust. That's what they are. And you're looking at yourself. You're grading yourself in terms of each of these, from hardly ever to occasionally to normally, and then almost to always. And just your first response is probably your best response. Okay, so answer them for yourself. Do not answer them as you know it ought to be. Answer it as it is. All right, you got it? All right, we'll come back to that, really, to your responses at the end. I don't have to tell you that trust is maybe the most critical thing about any of our relationships, and I think it's probably the bedrock of leadership. I would place trust above intelligence, above talent, above creativity. Because if you are not trustworthy, then those things don't matter. You can have all these other things, but if you're not trustworthy, then they don't trust your intelligence. They don't trust your credit. They don't trust you. So they're not going to give themselves to you and allow you to influence them. And trust is really the currency of influence and relationship. We've talked about this before. As trust builds, our capacity to influence, it goes like that. The more people trust us, the greater capacity you and I are going to have to make a difference in their lives. You may remember from way back, ultimately, if we want people to follow or to have let us have influence in their lives, then for that to happen, they have to trust us. And if we want people to trust us, you've seen this before, this is kind of a relation, then they have to connect with us. And if we want people to connect with us, and I think this is where a lot of guys really, really struggle, is that we have to be willing to show them our heart. We have to be willing to be open and transparent and honest and genuine. We got to be willing to bleed. We got to be willing to show vulnerability. I've mentioned her name before, and I know some of you have gone there. But if you've not read Brené Brown's book, Daring Greatly, you ought to read it. If you've not gone to TED Talks or not gone to YouTube and watched some of Brené Brown's talks on vulnerability, you need to do that. But be ready, for God will use her to get into your grill about the openness and honesty and vulnerability and transparency and genuineness of your life and my life. Okay, it'll be life altering, I'll promise you. But we want to make a difference. I mean, that's what we want to matter. And if we're going to make a difference in the lives of folk, it's built on trust. But trust is built. It's built. We may get some early collateral, okay, but ultimately it's built and earned. And it's earned because you've connected with people, and you connect with people because you're real. You show them your heart and your life. I wrote down in my notes, down some analogies about, or word pictures, you might say. Trust is like oil. Okay, if you don't have oil in your car engine, okay, everything's going to freeze up and you're not going anywhere. Trust is like that. Trust is like it's another way to look at it. Trust is relational money, currency. The more you got of that, okay, then the more effect that you can have. Trust is glue. It holds all relationships together. If this is a picture, if this picture is relationships, you're looking at a portrait in this relationships. What goes around a picture? A frame. That frame, in terms of relationships, is trust. It's trust. Everything is built on the willingness to trust. I think I've got in your notes the definition that Webster's has of trust. Trust is the belief. Frankly, I prefer the word confidence. The belief that someone is reliable, good, honest, or effective. It really is a pretty good working definition. Trust is the belief or confidence that someone is reliable, good, honest, or effective. Now, interesting, biblically, trust is defined as the willingness to rest your weight. To rest your weight on someone. That makes sense? Okay. An illustration that I've used many years ago that I think speaks to, that I've used in terms of faith and commitment, but I think it defines trust. My guess is all of you trusted the chair you're sitting in. Because I was here when some of you came in, not all of you. But I didn't see anybody pick up a chair. I didn't see anybody examine the legs. I didn't see anybody have a word of prayer. What was interesting is that you just basically sat down. You trusted all of your weight. I mean, all of us have sat in chairs probably that collapsed. Very embarrassing moment. Very embarrassing moment. I remember years ago we had an old set of chairs in a dining room, and it was a real small area, and my seat was up against the pass-through, and I remember I reached back to get something from the pass-through through Linda, and I put so much pressure, I guess, on the chair collapsed. Not only did it collapse, but right here in the corner was a wastebasket. And the last thing that I remembered was when the chair collapsed, okay, I ended up butt down, okay? And, you know, when you're as short as I am, you know, I'm in this, and my wife just laughed. She just laughed. I couldn't get out. And she just left me there for a good 2 or 3 minutes, you know, just looking at my stupidity on it. But I believe this chair will hold me up. You believe, you trusted that your chair will hold me up, but this chair will not hold me up until I do what? Give myself to it. That's trust. And that's what we want people to have in each of us. The willingness to rest all of their weight on who we are and what we do. So it raises the question, what are the behaviors that boost trust, that build confidence, so we'll have the capacity to make a greater difference in the lives of people? And because I know that you are like me, you're simple people. I put it in the form of A, B, C. A, B, C. If you want people to trust you, A is able. Able. Here's what people are asking. Are you able to get done what needs to get done and to help me to do the same? That's about being competent. That's A. I'll come back and unpack each of these a little bit in a minute. B is believable. B is believable. And that's it, you know. Can I put all my weight on you? Are you believable? Okay. And then C is connection or caring. And you've heard me ask this question before, because I think people, though they may not process it this way, this is ultimately what everyone is asking of you and me all the time. Are you for me, against me, or for yourself? What's your motive? Are you for me, against me, or for yourself? What is your motive? A is able, B is believable, C is connection. Okay? Now, if you look back at the assessment that you took, those first 7 questions have to do with being believable. Those first 7 behaviors have to do with being believable. Those are character issues for the C at the bottom of the page. Believable. Character issues. Behaviors 8 to 14 are able issues, competency issues. And 15 to 21 are connection behaviors. Building caring relations with others. Down at the very bottom of the assessment, 1 to 7 is character, 8 to 14, you've heard this 1,000 times, Mac, you maybe more than anybody else. Character, competency, and connection. That sounds familiar. Psalm 78, 72. And David shepherded them with integrity of heart, with skillful hands. He led them. Integrity of heart, character, skillful hands, competency, able. Shepherded them. Built relationships with them. Okay? Now, let me unpack just briefly, each one of these. And, if you want the notes, I'll be glad to send them to you. But I want to walk through these and just kind of, I guess, show you some of the qualities, the behaviors that support this important factor in building and boosting credibility and trust. Okay? You build trust when you know what to do, how to do it, and get it done, and enable others to do the same. That's when you build trust. People who are able consistently, just listen to your life. They are able to deliver quality results consistently. They're always getting better because they're developing their own skills. They strive to be good at whatever they do. They seek not just experience, but what I call relevant experience. They use their abilities to build others. They strive to be the very best at what they do. They never hoard information. And I could go on and on and on to behaviors that support that. And the question that I'm wanting you to ask and to honestly answer about yourself is, how able, competent am I? B is believable. Living and acting with integrity of character. We are believable when we keep our commitments, when we do what we say we will do, when we say we will do that, when we keep confidences, when we admit wrong, when we practice accountability, when we speak truth, when we talk straight, when we avoid talking behind people's backs, when we're sincere, when we're non-judgmental, when we show respect for others, when we right wrongs, when we show loyalty, when we never take credit for somebody else's work, and all. How believable are you? And then C, connection, truly caring for others, focusing on people. How do we do that? Listen attentively. Praise their efforts. Show genuine interest in them. Be transparent. Be vulnerable to others. Work with others. Show empathy. Ask them for input. Never gossip. Never spread rumors. Do not abuse any authority you might have. Never be condescending. And so on. You know the old adage, people do not care how much we know until they know how much we care. Until they know how much we care. Twice, it's recorded, I think it's the same thing. One's Matthew's rendering and one is Luke's. It's one of the ways to connect with people is, remember the golden rule? What is it? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Okay? I think as leaders, you and I need to always go first. And in the trust area, what that means, if we want other people to trust us, then we have to trust them first. We got to go first. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Do I want them to trust me? I do. Then I need to go first. Until they prove otherwise, I need to go first and trust them. You have to extend trust before you can get it. Showing trust in others helps them to trust you. One of the best ways to do that, and I mentioned this a while ago, is being there for people in time of need. Builds trust. Okay? Now, another analogy that I say, how many of you have a bank account? Okay, maybe one of you, two of you, that's the issue. You don't. Okay. Imagine trust is like a bank account. Okay? You got to keep making deposits if you want the account to grow. You got to keep making deposits. So, what we got here in this trust account, this is our trust account. These are the deposits. When we are able, when we're believable, when we connect with people. Every time we do any of those things, and all behaviors connected to those, we make a deposit, 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 okay? And the account is growing and growing and growing. But none of us are perfect, okay? There are going to be times along the way, okay, that because we didn't do what we said we would do, or we didn't do it when we said that we would do it, even with the purest motives or intents, okay, or we unintentionally or intentionally misrepresented something, then we made a withdrawal. Okay, but we got the account. What happens if you make more withdrawals than deposits? Okay, eventually you're bankrupt. And when you get to the very, very bottom, okay, whatever it is, here's what you need to know. Relationship over. Relationship over. Now, I think that one of the, I kind of struggle with this one, whether or not I'm not even convinced myself it's fully true, but I had lunch last week with a longtime friend in the church. He showed me this. I thought, to me, it was pretty profound. Part of that was because I think I knew that had this week coming and this teaching. Okay, and he said, "Jimmy, I've known you for a long time, and I'm going to throw our trust level way up there, way up there." Okay. He said, here's what I know, and working in the marketplace and my family, got some issues going on in his family. Here's what I know, okay? At some point out here, if you broke trust, even in the minimal way, what's happened is that's going down. The trust level's going down. He said, now, it may begin to upward tick, okay? But at some point, you may break trust level again, and it goes down. And then it may uptick and go down. He said, here's what I know. Is the trust level, though it can be restored to some degree, it's very unlikely that it ever returns to where it originally was. I'm not saying never, because some people have a very unique capacity to do that. But I think those are rare, okay? It doesn't mean there can be an element of restoration. Certainly there can be, but we'll always be a little bit hesitant. A little bit reticent, okay? God, he burned me before. And maybe in here we want to, but it's hard to get there. That's why you say, gosh, Jimmy, that's a lot of pressure. You bet it is. Especially for those of us who are heads of our households and have leadership responsibilities, whether titled or not. That's why every breach of trust, no matter how small, is significant. Is significant. Because you may lose ground. You will lose ground that you may never can fully recover. So that leads me to the next section, and that has to do with how do you rebuild the trust. And I've said, I think you can rebuild it, but maybe not to where it was. Let me give you 3 things. What do I do if I've blown it? Number 1, admit. Admit you messed up. Admit you blew it. Swallow your pride. Don't blame someone else. Own up. Be responsible. And look the offended party in the face, whether it's a spouse or a kid or a co-worker, and just say, listen, I was wrong. And I'm sorry. Just look at the face, just own up. And that's the next one. Ask for forgiveness. Ask for forgiveness. That's important. Don't just own up. Listen, I'm telling you, the relationship has been damaged. Yes, you need to own up. But to some degree, you need to get the onus off of you and really onto them. And when you ask them to forgive you, you do that. You can't make them forgive you. But it's not your responsibility to do that anyway. Our responsibility is to confess the wrongdoing to God and to person and to ask them for forgiveness. It's their responsibility whether or not they give it. But if they don't, then they have to deal with the root of bitterness. You and I have done what God in Scripture teaches us to do, and that is to seek their forgiveness. God has and will forgive. Whether or not the other person does, we can never make that happen. You and I know that they should and we should, but not everyone does. Not everyone does. So you got to admit the wrong, you got to ask for forgiveness, and then the last A is act. Act. Act to correct the situation. If there's some kind of needed restitution, do it. But to me, here's a very important issue in this restoration of trust, and that's this. Here's what that other person is wanting you to answer for them. How do I know you're not going to do it again? What are you going to put in place? What actions, what steps, what are you going to do to put in place to ensure with all of the fiber of your being that this is not going to happen again? That's what they want to know. That's what they want to know. And that's important because, again, look at this trust and time relationship, okay? Some of the behaviors, we'll go back to those in a minute, okay? In your life, in my life, if they become repetitive, detrimental behaviors to boosting and to building trust, then eventually, if it's the same person that's being offended over and over again, like a spouse, eventually they get to the point that they no longer believe you. Honey, you've done this 1,000 times, and you've admitted it. You've asked me to forgive you 1,000 times, and I have. And here we are at 1,001. Are you ever going to stop that behavior? That's what they want to know. And in the end, that's what matters most. What are you going to do to be sure that it's going to be different going forward? Okay? And what we want to do sometimes, and we're really bad at it as Christians, is that we want to blame them for not adjusting to our bad behavior. or bad repeated behavior. Okay? They need to be more forgiving. They need to be more understanding. No, you need to change. You need to alter whatever the behavior is that continues to disrupt the trust in the relationships, and to fix it. If that means getting an accountability group, if that means a combination of study, whatever it means, you do that. And I get amazed because I know that I have done that before. I don't do that anymore. I know that I used to be willing to do stuff to repair relationships for people that I worked with that I was more to do for my own wife and kids. You know, one day the light came on and said, Jimmy, are you an idiot? I mean, in the end, who matters the most to you? Who do you love the most? And I don't want to be offensive to anyone, but I want to be at least offensive to my wife and kids. You know, one of my definitions of success is I want the people who know me best and love me the most to respect me the most, because they know me the most. Okay? I know often, I'm doing one in January when I do a retreat for spiritual leaders in the church, especially if they were electable leaders in the church. And I always have the spouses come, always. I never get the men alone. I want the spouses there. Because one of the questions I always ask them is, listen, if we were voting on your husband again to be a spiritual leader in the life of this church, okay, wives, this is what I want to know from you. Would you vote yes on your husband again? And if the answer to that is no, okay, two things need to happen. When you get home, you need to tell him if he doesn't know. And then number two, guys, you need to resign tomorrow. Or get it fixed. Because if the people who know you and love you the most are no longer for you, you've lost credibility. Oh, you can play the game. Absolutely, and many do, okay? But you live with the hypocrisy and the guilt. And many do for a long time, okay? And that can lead you to places that you don't want to go, okay? My guess says that had a lot to do with Isaac's issues, okay? Because the issues that surfaced that became public a year ago were not issues that showed up a month before that. But he never dealt with the issues, and ultimately and eventually he lost all, as it were, credibility. Okay? Now, let me close, then I want to go back to the assessment. I'm going to read you my close. Too many people, including leaders, settle for low T because they don't know how trust is formed. Trust doesn't just happen. I think it's built over time, earned, and it's built through intentional, trust-building behaviors. Specifically, A, B, and C. See if you agree with this. Three of the most powerful words anyone can say to you or me in any and all of our relationships are these three words. I trust you. Those are three of the most life-altering words, not just to hear, but say. And there are a couple things that I want you to do, okay? One, I want you to be thinking about at least someone today that you can look straight in the face. And feel free to do more than one. Look them straight in the face and say, I want to tell you something. I trust you. I don't mean the world. I don't mean the world to them. Amen? Okay. Go back to your assessment. And these behaviors. Again, the first 7 have to do with character behaviors, and the next 8 to 14 have to do with competence, and then 15 to 21 with connection. Okay? Obviously, you want as many answers to the right as possible. Okay? Here's, I'm an increasingly transparent guy, and I didn't have any hard evers. I didn't, okay? But I did have 7 occasionallys, and those aren't the best, just being honest, okay? I checked occasionally, admitting when I'm wrong. I hate it, admitting I'm wrong, okay? I'd admit it, okay? But I'm not omnicompetent, and I am wrong. And I really have to humble myself and be broken to admit that. And of all places, the hardest place to admit that is at home. Avoid talking behind people's backs. I do that occasionally. It's not good. Being non-judgmental. Okay, being judgmental is one of my gifts. Okay, unfortunately it's an anti-spiritual gift. Okay, I have to work hard on that one. Okay, and 8 to 14. I really do hope there's not a pride element in there. I'm strong in all those because I work really hard. I think all of these are important, but character is the fundamental issue. It's the bedrock. Down under, connecting with others, listen well. Yeah, I do that occasionally. I need to do it more often. But praising others' efforts. I'm really doing that better than I've ever done it, but I can only honestly feel like a mark occasionally. Showing empathy for others. I would like to tell you, well, spiritual gifts, I know what they are, I know what mine are, and mercy's a low one. That's an excuse. People with a mercy gift will be better at it, but there's no excuse not to be empathetic and to be sensitive and to be caring for others. It isn't, okay? Asking for input. I hit occasionally on that one. I need to do that more often, and I feel that I do it more than you might say that I once did it, but not as often as I need to do it. But I think sometimes, guys, the first step in seeing change and growth take place is honestly and accurately assessing current reality. You can't get a sense of where you need to be if you don't know where you are. That's why when you go into the mall, you can almost find immediately when you get in some sign that says, "You are here." Okay? And, well, but I want to go there. But if you don't know where you are, you can't get there. And that's why I do all of these funky assessments for you guys. To try to put some instrument in your hands, you can begin to assess current reality. What I can't make you to do is to do that honestly. To do that honestly, okay? So here's a couple things I want you to do as we close. Number one, we got a few minutes. Take whatever time that you can. I would like for you to share around the table, okay, an area, too, that you feel like you need to work on. Okay? And it'll probably be in one of those 2 left-hand columns. Okay? Probably over in that area. And then the second thing, and I'm sorry for the mistake, and I can get you an electronic copy, but you need to do it. What I've got, here they are. Sometimes we don't read ourselves as well as we would like to read ourselves. We can be unintentionally dishonest with ourselves. Here are 50 copies of that assessment, just the assessment. Change the title because I didn't know who you might put it in front of from, "Are you suffering from low T?" I didn't want you to have to go through the explanation, okay? And just simply called it the trust factor, okay? And one of the things I would like for you to do, and again, I can send you an electronic copy, but you'll need to change that, be judgmental to non, is why don't you take 1 or 2 of these, 3 of these, give it to somebody who knows you well, give it to somebody at work, and let them assess you. Okay, and get some feedback from others. Okay, I'm gonna leave those up here, for your.